What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the Touchline Talk Show. Thanks so much for joining. Really good show in store for you tonight. We're going to get to some more Premier League action. We're going to play a game based on the opening weekend of the season. And we're going to do that first, but later in the show, we're going to talk Barcelona, provide an update on the chaos that is ensuing as a result of all of these levers they're trying to pull, and just the latest updates as to what's going on there, and talk some MLS transfers, the end of the transfer window with the All-Star game taking place tonight. Didn't get to talk about that over the weekend or even last week on this show because so much of preparing for the European season with the Premier League starting last weekend. So I wanted to go back. Thought the All-Star break was it's not even really a break, but the All-Star game was a good point to talk about some of the developments in Major League Soccer as well. But first, we're going to play a game of buy or sell based on the Premier League opening weekend. Now, the idea here is buying or selling the performances of specific teams. So this isn't necessarily buying or selling the teams themselves. It is buying or selling what we saw from them on this opening weekend. How realistic is the performance they put in, the result they got moving forward? So we've got 3 on buying, 3 on selling. The first team I'm buying, and I talked about this on the weekly roundup, but want to dive in a little bit more here, is Manchester United. I buy the way the game unfolded, with the fact that they did dominate possession at times. There was a portion in the first half where they looked like an Erik ten Hag coach team. Then they gave up a goal, and they didn't react well. I buy all of that. I buy the fact they looked better with an actual striker on the field. Now, part of that had to do with the fact that Anthony Martial was not available and Cristiano Ronaldo was your only striker you could put out there. Yes, Marcus Rashford could play that position, but at this point I would argue he's much more of a winger. So you got Christian Eriksen playing as the false 9, and unsurprisingly, when you put the creative midfielder in the midfield and give him somebody to pass the ball up the field to, it looks better. I buy the struggles they had defensively and the poor midfield performance. They looked exactly like Manchester United last season from a sort of overall narrative of how this game played out. And the team itself looked very similar because, yes, you got a couple new players in there, but Christian Eriksen was playing in a strange position. Lisandro Martinez is a center back who can only impact the game so much and had never played in the Premier League before. So you get the same thing. And I said in the weekly roundup video, it'll probably look a little bit different. I have faith that Erik ten Hag is going to turn this team into something that looks more like him. But that doesn't mean the results change. And the one part that I want to dive into here specifically that I did not talk much about on Monday's video is the base of that midfield. I was really impressed with Fred at times last season. And Scott McTominay, every once in a while, has a really good game. The question has always been, are those two guys good enough to anchor a midfield that allows Manchester United to get where Manchester United wants to be, expects to be, should be? They haven't really done anything to definitively show the answer is yes. And then you get performances like the one on Sunday, where it really looks like the answer is no. And if you ask anybody right now, the answer is no. And if you're looking at what is, from a personnel standpoint, what is this Manchester United team lacking more than anything else? It's a midfielder who can connect the back line to the attacking 4, 5, 6, whatever it ends up being. who can get the ball from Lisandro Martinez and Harry Maguire to Christian Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes. That's not something McTominay or Fred do particularly well. And then you've got the turnovers. McTominay in particular had a really rough game. And so now it sounds like Adrien Rabiot is coming in. And I understand that's Manchester United's solution. Adrien Rabiot, really? And yes, would this be much more ideal if this was Frankie de Jong? Sure. But Adrien Rabiot is going to give you something those two holding midfielders don't have right now. He's much better technically than both of them. He gives you something going forward. And not just from a goal-scoring perspective, but an actual helping build up play, which, again, is the single most glaring issue with this team. I kind of like this, if I'm being honest. Again, this is all relatively speaking. Is Adrien Rabiot the solution to Manchester United's problems? Of course not. And are there valid off-field concerns about how this is actually going to play out with everything going on with Ronaldo? Absolutely. But if you're looking for somebody who can come in and make this team better quickly, to me, Adrien Rabiot fits that description. So we'll see if they get this over the line. It certainly sounds like it's going to happen. But from a what am I buying perspective, I'm buying everything we saw. And I do believe Adrien Rabiot is going to help one of those issues, which is the train wreck that was the base of that midfield. First team I'm selling, Bournemouth. Terrific win. Massive to start with 3 points, to not put yourself immediately in the relegation zone. And then we actually look at the numbers. Shout out to FBref.com, Football Reference. That's where I'm getting this data. Love to look at their stuff. It's just absolutely fantastic and really helps paint a picture. So all this stuff I'm going to reference in here with all these teams, courtesy of Football Reference. Bournemouth scored 1.5 more goals than they were expected to. That was tied for the second largest margin in the Premier League behind Spurs, who have a bunch of lethal finishers, so it's not exactly surprising they are exceeding their expected goals total. The only teams that had fewer shots than Bournemouth were West Ham, who were playing Manchester City, so you automatically get a pass, and Nottingham Forest, who were also playing their first game back in the Premier League since, Brennan Johnson was alive. And we're in a difficult spot. We're going to talk about the team they played in just a second here. It was a terrific win. XG is not everything. And, it's not like they beat another newly promoted side. It's not like they beat a Southampton where many people are picking them to get relegated. They did do something impressive against a team many people are high on. It's also a team that finished 14th and was 14th with Philippe Coutinho. He didn't, when he came in, as I talked about in the season preview, he didn't actually move them up the table at all. Now, what they did do is they beat the teams they were supposed to. That obviously did not happen opening weekend. My question with Bournemouth is still the same. It is, who is scoring these goals? Kiefer Moore gets one. But is Kiefer Moore going to go score 12? There was just nothing in that performance that made me question my thinking about Bournemouth. That's the simplest way I can put this. I'm selling the performance. To me, that's just what happens sometimes. It's one of those, You hang in there defensively. You find a way to get a goal. Then that changes things, allows you to get a second. And all of a sudden, that game is, the scoreline looks different than it actually should based on the balance of play. So I am selling Bournemouth. Mentioned them a second ago. The second team I am buying, Newcastle. Very quietly. And again, opponent has to be part of the context here. I get that. But if you're looking at the 3 promoted teams, some people would pick Fulham as the one most likely to stay up. Others would pick Forest. They're coming in with some talent. Newcastle had the most shots in the Premier League, the most shots on target, and the most shot-creating actions. They were second in progressive passes behind Manchester City. They dominated this game. It was played almost entirely in Forest's half. They were creating chances. They ultimately took some chances. Nottingham Forest did not come anywhere close to really posing a danger. Newcastle were outstanding. And so, to me, this is not as much about this one performance and saying, oh, this means they're going to challenge for top 4. It's much more about, okay, you came off of what you did in the second half of last season, specifically in 2022. And then you came back and did exactly what you were supposed to in a week where that can't be said of every single team. You know, Manchester City did fine. Liverpool obviously dropped points. Chelsea were fine. Weren't exactly thrilling in attack. Manchester United lost. Arsenal were pretty good. Spurs were very good. And you start, West Ham offered very little in attack. Leicester blew a 2-goal lead. Aston Villa lost. You're just sort of going down the list of these teams that you're expecting to be. Brighton had obviously a very good performance. But you're just going down this list of teams you're expecting to be up there in the 5, 6, 7 range, competing with the big 6. And Newcastle started as well as any of them, if not better than all of them. Again, when you see them do this against better opposition, what can they do against the big 6? That all is still, the jury's still out on all that. But look at what Newcastle did and compare that to what Liverpool did. From a being ready to go, taking control of the game, and just dominating minute 1 to minute 90. It was an excellent, excellent performance. I'm buying it. I don't exactly know what that means yet. I still haven't decided what I think Newcastle's ceiling is. But that team we saw is the team Newcastle is. I buy Eddie Howe. I buy this squad. They're still trying to upgrade it. You're now hearing potential Christian Pulisic rumors. We'll see what the squad ends up looking like at the end of the transfer window. But even as presently constructed, absolutely buying what we saw, buying Newcastle as a legit top 7 team that may have something to say in the top 4 race. Not willing to go there quite yet, though. Second team I'm selling, unsurprisingly, Liverpool. As much of a quote-unquote disaster as that was, they still finished with the 3rd highest expected goals total in the league. Virgil van Dijk had one of the worst games of his career. They just started really poorly. And Fulham came out with an incredible amount of energy and really made life difficult. And it was kind of too late by the time Liverpool actually got into the game and started being on the front foot and being the team in the ascendancy. Then they get the goal back and you start feeling like, okay, they're going to be fine. They're going to find a way to win this. Then they concede the penalty. Then they get the goal back again. And then Jordan Henderson nearly does win it on a day where they were not good in stoppage time against a team that is coming back into the Premier League. Terrific fan base. That stadium is electric. These things just happen sometimes. And they still got a point. It's not like they lost. Now, they didn't deserve to win this game, and they still very nearly did. But the biggest part of this for me and why I'm selling this as a, glaring warning sign, above all else, is A, I don't think Van Dijk's going to have that happen again, and B, Darwin Núñez was spectacular, as he was in the Community Shield. He is a perfect fit, and I talked about this from the beginning, but now you can actually see it. Just stylistically, he is such a good fit as a number 9 in this system. because he just gets on the end of everything. And that is, right, when you got Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson and Mo Salah and Luis Diaz, that is exactly what you want. He just finds a way to get to the ball and to put the ball in the net. It's very basic, but it's obviously the most difficult thing to do in this sport. If he struggled and it was really looking like he was having a hard time fitting into this team and this system, that's when I would get a little bit worried. And it's way too early to give up on him. But I would be hesitant to completely sell this performance and result the way I am if you had the poor overall performance plus Darwin Nunez struggling. He was terrific when he came on. They got it going eventually. It was just a little bit too little too late. And they were also playing an excellent opponent on this given day. Fulham were very, very, very good. So they are still right there with Manchester City. My thoughts have not changed on them one bit. Granted, I did do this the year it all fell apart and kind of jumped off the bandwagon late. I'm just going to ride with Jurgen Klopp until I have a reason not to. And what I saw against Fulham was nowhere near enough for me to really be concerned about them at all, in all honesty. Speaking of Fulham, final team I'm buying. 2 reasons. In addition to the fact I think Marco Silva gets a little bit of a bad rap, and the fact, as I talked about when I was doing the season preview, that, by the way, they were so much better last year than they ever have been coming up. They obliterated goal scoring records. That doesn't just go away overnight. But actually seeing them in the Premier League. 2 things. One, talked about this a little bit, but Alexander Mitrovic was fantastic against an elite defense. I mean, he consistently got the better of Virgil van Dijk and was a pest all game long. And he was really good off the ball too. If you've got a fit Alexander Mitrovic doing all of the running, the pressing, the being annoying, in addition to scoring goals and having confidence in the Premier League, because that's the other part of this for him too, is just putting those goals away against one of the best defensive teams he's going to see. In his very first game back in the Premier League, has to do wonders for his confidence. Because he knows as well as everybody else, he has struggled to consistently produce in the Premier League in his previous stint. He looked like a different player. Again, it is 90 minutes. This is about consistency because you know he's got these kind of performances in him. But seeing what he did on and off the ball, you've got to feel really good about that. And the second part, Fulham had 36 interceptions in this game. That was 10 more than any other team in the Premier League opening weekend. If Mitrovic is playing like this, or anywhere close to this, and they are as active, as aggressive, and as fundamentally sound defensively as they were, and yes, Liverpool ended up getting behind them a little bit in the second half, but again, this is Liverpool. You got to keep your expectations in check. If they put this kind of defensive performance together and come out with the energy and intensity they did, they're staying up. And Tim Ream was talking about basically, yeah, we did exactly what we wanted to. We didn't really have to change our game plan at all. That's a pretty terrifying thought for the other teams that are trying to avoid relegation. If day one, Marco Silva has this team able to execute against Liverpool the way they want to. For all of those reasons, I'm buying this result. I'm all aboard. Again, I don't know if that means they can finish, 13th, 14th or something. But if you're asking me today, after these games, to pick who gets relegated, Fulham is not in my 3 teams. Final performance I am selling. Crystal Palace. Was not a great first half, particularly the first, 20, 30 minutes. They did grow into the game, control portions of the second half. Arsenal, as Arsenal have struggled to do at times, just couldn't really continue to keep command of the game and dictate the tempo once they went ahead. This is the difference between what you saw from Newcastle, who were absolutely able to do that, and what you saw from Arsenal, albeit against a tougher opponent. But Crystal Palace completed 508 passes to Arsenal's 378, and they're coming off of this very strange split preseason where their guys haven't been able to play together. That's a game you can lose and still be the team I and many other people expect Crystal Palace to be. And B, I'm just not sure they were really 2 goals worse than Arsenal. And Arsenal were pretty good. Crystal Palace certainly didn't deserve to win that game or anything. But again, just going back to, did I see anything to change my opinion about this team and what Patrick Vieira has going on? No, not at all. They need to figure out the striker position. But other than that, they were fine. They played a team that was better and they lost. It happens. It happens quite frequently, actually. So that's the final team I'm selling. There's nothing I can pinpoint and say, I am now concerned about that, and that was something I wasn't concerned about a week ago. Still think they're a top half of the table team. Still think they have every opportunity to finish better than last season and to take another step and be somewhere near the conversation for those final, the Conference League spot or something like that. Don't think they're going to get it, but absolutely they could be in the 7, 8, 9 range for most of the season. So that is buy or sell. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, trying to make sense of everything going on at Barcelona and some MLS transfer talk, getting you updated on all of the mega deals. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but major transfers that came in right as the transfer window closed and what it means for the league as a whole, because I have plenty of thoughts on that as well. You're watching the Touchline Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the Touchline Talk Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. All right, so here we go. Barcelona. Most recent series of developments. As of 6:30-ish Eastern on Wednesday night, right before I went live here, still had not registered any of their summer signings. That includes Ousmane Dembele and Sergio Roberto, who they gave new contracts to, so they're technically new signings, which means they don't have them eligible either. ESPN is now reporting that if Frank Kessié and Andreas Christensen aren't registered by Saturday for their opener against Rayo Vallecano, they can leave for free because they were free agent signings. There was no transfer fee involved. And the next part of this drama, there are reports out there, you may have seen some of them. Barcelona is trying to void the contract extension signed by Gerard Piqué, Clement Lenglet, Marc-Andre ter Stegen, and Frankie de Jong. This smells an awful lot like trying to find a way to force Frankie de Jong to take a pay cut. We don't know all the details. I'm not here to make any definitive accusations because we just don't know. It would be irresponsible. But it smells fishy with the way Frankie de Jong has been treated in particular. And by the way, as they're trying to convince Frankie de Jong to take this pay cut, they apparently are at least close to lining up deals for Bernardo Silva and Marcos Alonso. Now, it seems that at least the Bernardo Silva deal might be dependent on being able to get De Jong out. But they, if they have their way, are not done spending. They still haven't registered a player. This is just absolutely incredible. And they do have some time to actually get these players registered. Except for if Kessié and Christensen aren't registered by Saturday and decide to leave. Assuming ESPN's reporting is true. But it is just an absolute mess. And now it also seems Chelsea is talking about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. There are also discussions about buying out Memphis Depay and him joining Juventus. So there seems to be at least a little traction on getting some of these players out to finance all of these new signings and actually allow them to be registered by La Liga. This is Wednesday evening. They play Saturday. Robert Lewandowski is not eligible to play in that game right now. They seem confident this is going to get sorted out one way or another. But at what point of this has it really felt like they have a plan other than solving the immediate problem in front of them? Right? It's been this entire saga of basically just putting band-aids over everything without any sort of consideration given to what the next step is. Because Frankie de Jong doesn't want to leave. And he wants the money that, Barcelona contractually agreed to pay him. Now, maybe there was something that happened with this contract extension he signed. Got to at least hear Barcelona's side of the story. But it just never ends. There's always something more going on with this. Just when you think it can't get any crazier, the next level reaches. So we'll see what happens Saturday. Maybe they find a way to get these guys registered at the last moment. Maybe Frank Kessié and Andres Christensen never play for Barcelona. Who knows at this point? But that is what is going on there, and be prepared for the possibility that there are more signings to come. It seems, and it would make sense, they're a little more focused on trying to make sure they got the guys they already did sign, eligible to play for them first. But Fabrizio Romano is basically saying there's another plan in place if they can get the guys out they want to. Whether they actually can, a different story. But there is your Barcelona update. Also want to take some time to talk about the end of this MLS transfer window as we hit the All-Star game and really set the stage for the end of the season. We got fascinating races for the final playoff spots in both conferences involving some of the biggest teams in the league. The LA Galaxy, Portland Timbers, Seattle Sounders, Toronto. All of a sudden, the Chicago Fire have come to life. It is fascinating what is going on. And then you got LAFC doing LAFC things. And, Austin FC hasn't taken a step back at all. But there's sort of this jumbled mess of teams that haven't made the playoffs before and teams that expect to make it every single season, sort of teetering right around that playoff line, all battling each other. Or the Chicago Fire, who are having this renaissance out of nowhere. And, was Bastian Schweinsteiger on their team the last time they made the playoffs? I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's been a little while for them too. So, some of your deals, if you missed some of this and all the excitement of the European season starting. Christian Benteke is a member of DC United. Ricky Puig, yes, Ricky Puig from Barcelona is now a member of the LA Galaxy. And LAFC decided they needed to upgrade the striker position because it was only providing, a goal every 2 games. So Dennis Bouanga is in as their designated player. I believe I mentioned this on there before, but that was sort of always what John Thornton, their general manager, was saying was, we intend to fill this designated player spot with a striker by the end of the transfer window. Never promised they were going to do it, but there was absolutely a plan in place and targets they were going after. So you're adding a DP to this attack that is already loaded. So those were some of the bigger deals, which then mean some of the other signings get swept under the rug. And I want to talk about these for a second and then make the bigger point. One of them is Alessandro Schwarf. Schaff. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Alessandro Schaff is an Austrian international with 32 caps, 143 appearances in the Bundesliga, and appearances in the Champions League. He now plays for the Vancouver Whitecaps. And nobody seemed to bat an eye when this deal got made. Why? Because we were talking about Ricky Puig and LAFC's designated player striker spot and Christian Benteke. Carlos Acapo started 21 times in La Liga last season. San Jose Earthquakes got him on a free transfer. And again, these are the Whitecaps and the Earthquakes, 2 of the teams near the bottom of the Western Conference. This transfer window for Major League Soccer, and I wrote about this in my 5 things from the week, absolutely leveled up during this transfer window. It is a different conversation about this league now. And it's not because Gareth Bale came. It's because going from, Federico Bernardeschi all the way up, and even Eric Tommy in Kansas City, another Bundesliga veteran, for a Kansas City team that is arguably the worst in the league and is not going anywhere. Again, just think about the credentials I just read off and the players these teams joined. Not Ricky Puig and Dennis Bouanga, but Alessandro Schaff and Carlos Acapo. These are teams either somewhat in the playoff conversation or nowhere close, signing guys with 32 caps for a good European country in Austria, or, a regular starter in La Liga last season. Since when are these non-stories? But it's just the reality of what this league has become. Right? 5 years ago, you get a guy like that, the entire league is jumping up and down. And he's not playing in Vancouver or San Jose. He's playing in LA, he's playing in New York, maybe Chicago. Maybe Seattle's able to get him, It is incredible how quickly this has turned. And the other reason I see this as a definitive leveling up point is there are sort of steps in this progression to becoming one of the best leagues in the world. As in, somewhere competitive, maybe not with the big 5 in Europe, but on that next level, your Eredivisie, those kind of leagues. The first step was, okay, we got to get people interested in this league, which means you go get your David Beckhams, your Kakas, whoever it might be. Right. You embrace the retirement league aspect of this to get the big names. Over time, you got to start moving away from that, which this league very much has. There's always going to be a place for that player, but that player is no longer guaranteed to be a home run and hasn't for a few years now. Zlatan is Zlatan. But even going back to Pirlo and Lampard when they came, right, that didn't work at all. So what did you see the next evolution? Okay, the next evolution is we need to get involved in the global market. Prove that we can be a pathway for players to develop and then succeed in Europe. This is where what Atlanta United did comes into play. This is where selling Alphonso Davies to Bayern Munich and then having him turn into arguably the best left back in the world, or at least one of the top three, comes into play. This is where having guys from MLS academies, Brendan Aronson, you can even go to, Weston McKennie, Gio Reyna. Of course, they didn't actually play in MLS, but they came through MLS academies. And you can go down the line, right? There are all kinds of guys coming out of MLS academies that are now going to Europe. That's where that part of this comes into play. You look at a Diego Rossi, you look at a Miguel Almiron as two examples of, right, that second step toward becoming one of the best leagues in the world. Is you've got to get involved in the global market, and the academies are part of this too, of sort of the final step of that part of the equation is, can we get European teams to trust that the players we are sending them are ready to contribute, or, in a position to contribute when the timing is right. You're not guaranteeing that every single 18-year-old who goes over is immediately going to be ready. But there is very much this trust that is growing when guys come out of MLS. What Brendan Aronson is doing is helping. You can go down the list. There are so many guys at this point. But it is no longer kind of this stigma from a scouting standpoint. The third part of this, which is where MLS is now, it sort of coincided with, now you've got a really good reputation where, teams are coming after Jesus Ferreira, they're coming after Ricardo Pepi. Paxton Aronson has barely started his MLS career, and you're already talking about, teams being interested in him in Europe. Now you've got the academy part going. Can you turn the players, at least some of the players you are bringing in, from investments, which is very much what we have seen in some of these bigger signings that are super young, right? Your Diego Rossi's and Miguel Almirons. The idea was always, get them in, let them thrive, and then go sell them for a massive profit. From day one, that was the plan. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the next step is, can you go from investments to landing players at that level or at a comparable level in their primes? And that is what happened this transfer window, right? Most of these guys are in their late 20s. If you've thrown in Alonso Insigne, Christian Benteke, okay, early 30s. But all these guys are approaching in or on the back part, but still within the window of their prime. This is just not Toronto signed not one but two Italian internationals who were on the field in the Euro 2020 final, last summer, who are in their primes. They're not 35. This is a completely new world for Major League Soccer, which is why I wanted to highlight so much that the pedigree and the track records I was listing off. Vancouver Whitecaps, San Jose Earthquakes signed those players. So you're always going to have the advantages of the biggest clubs, right? Ricky Puig was not going to probably be going to Orlando or Dallas or Chicago. I mean, Chicago got Schweinsteiger and Shaqiri. But I'm just throwing out teams. He was good. He's got the Barcelona background. He was probably going to a bigger club. There's always going to be a spot for Gareth. Gareth Bale is not going to go play in Houston. But you saw everything this transfer window. You saw Gareth Bale still want to come here. You saw Wayne Rooney turn down coaching jobs in Europe to come back to DC United. And you saw this flurry of proven European guys who are choosing to come to Major League Soccer. And Cucho Hernandez falls into this category too. This is not something that used to happen consistently. And all of a sudden, just about every team in the league is capable of pulling off a signing like this. These are established, Bundesliga, Premier League, La Liga players. No, they're not the top players on their teams. But it is incredible how far this league has come in such a short span of time when it comes to the quality of player they're acquiring. It was already dead, but if anybody is still out there talking about this being a retirement league and the talent level not being good enough, you're not doing the research, you don't know this league well enough, you don't know the players in this league. The talent is getting there. It's not there yet, but we are approaching the where does MLS rank in the list of leagues in the world outside the Big Five conversation. We are getting close. And this transfer window is proof of that and a reminder of just how much sway this league now holds. Players want to come here. And I think players are sort of starting to feel comfortable with the idea that it's not going to sacrifice your national team career. Because that was a major concern. Look at what happened to Sebastian Giovinco. He's another good example, right? Toronto got him because it's Toronto. And no, not all these guys are Giovinco. I mean, Giovinco is one of the best players to ever kick a ball in Major League Soccer. But it's the whole league getting guys in that ballpark now. It's not a huge deal when somebody signs somebody with 100 Bundesliga appearances or 100 La Liga appearances, because it's happening all over the place. And I hadn't gotten to talk about that, so I wanted to highlight it because it's going to make this MLS Cup and these playoffs even more interesting, but also it is setting the stage for the next era of Major League Soccer, because this is only going to continue happening. And you're only going to find more incredibly gifted players coming out of MLS academies and going to Europe. Gianluca Busio is another good example. This is not going backwards. This is only going to continue to go forwards, and you're only going to see more money being able to be poured into this league because of the players you're selling, because their values are only going to go up, and the ability to acquire higher level players to where you're going to look up one day and realize Major League Soccer is not that far behind the Eredivisie. Is anybody on Ajax's level? No. We're not there yet, like I said. But if you want to know what it looks like to slowly but surely build yourself up and get into that conversation, look at the evolution of transfers in and out of Major League Soccer. It tells a very clear story with a very clear trajectory. And that arrow is pointing all the way up. This is only going to get better and better and better. So there's my Major League Soccer spiel. We're going to take one more break and then get into the weekend look ahead, talk about the biggest games. We got more major European leagues starting, Major League Soccer, all of that good stuff. We'll be right back on the Touchline Talk Show. And welcome back to the Touchline Talk Show one more time. Going to wrap up as we always do with our weekend look ahead. Starting in the Premier League, couple of games I want to highlight. Saturday, Leicester at Arsenal. Leicester coming off a very disappointing draw against Brentford. Arsenal, as I talked about a little bit, that very good win over Crystal Palace. Can Arsenal keep this thing going? Can Leicester find a way to steal 3 points and feel much better about their standing through 2 weeks? Manchester United at Brentford, also on Saturday. Does this get worse for Manchester United? Christian Eriksen returns to his old stomping ground. Can Brentford build off of a rather fortuitous point they just got? They were not good in the first half and found a way to not let the game completely run away from them. Josh Da Silva scores a terrific goal late, and all of a sudden they got a point. This is setting up to be a very, very fascinating meeting. And then your game of the weekend in the Premier League, Tottenham at Chelsea on Sunday. We're going to see which of these two teams that may or may not be able to stay in the title race are in better shape early on. If Tottenham can get through this one with 3 points, we're getting close to the point where we have to take them as serious title contenders until they prove otherwise. Sort of flipping from not giving them the benefit of the doubt to giving them the benefit of the doubt. And from Chelsea's perspective, you're at home, you got to get 3 points. If you want to stay anywhere near Liverpool and City, that's what you got to do. And this is also kind of there's some variance between how people feel Tottenham, Chelsea, and Arsenal line up 3 through 5. It seems to be pretty much the consensus, but what is the actual order? We're going to get some insight there as well. In Spain, as we kick off La Liga, already mentioned Rayo Vallecano at Barcelona on Saturday. Real Madrid travel to newly promoted Almeria, and Atletico Madrid are at Getafe on Monday. They've got the very late game, not even this weekend, but match day 1. In Italy, Serie A gets underway. AC Milan hosts Udinese on Saturday. Inter goes to Lecce on Saturday. And your most interesting game of match day 1, Sassuolo at Juventus on Monday. Some fascinating, bizarre scenes resulting from Sassuolo's exit from Coppa Italia. Go check out those videos. They're all over the internet if you want to see what happened there. Now you get Juventus. Welcome to Serie A. In Major League Soccer, some very, very interesting games this weekend. I like these matchups a lot. The ones I picked out for my absolute favorites. Chicago Fire at Philadelphia Union. This is the Surging Fire who just beat the Union against top of the East Philadelphia, coming off of their first bad performance in probably 2 months against Cincinnati. The most interesting game of the weekend for me in Major League Soccer, Portland Timbers at Toronto FC. Both these teams need 3 points to put themselves in a better position when it comes to playoffs and the standings. You got all kinds of firepower. Toronto is going to try and pull this thing off. Really looking forward to that one. Minnesota at Nashville, two of your better teams in the West on Sunday. And your final game of the weekend, Real Salt Lake at Seattle Sounders, late Sunday night. RSL is just quietly sat in a playoff spot pretty much all season. Seattle Sounders have work to do to get in. They're in this tough stretch. I've mentioned this before. You're at home. They can't afford to continue to drop points here. And in the end of USL, Orlando Pride at San Diego Wave on Saturday. Chicago Red Stars at Angel City on Sunday are the two games I picked to highlight there. Some of your better teams in the league higher up in the standings. But that is all we have for you today. Thank you so much for turning in to the Touchline Talk Show. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Check out all of the written content on Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com. And we'll see